Day off or it's a long day for you. I appreciate you coming in. This is advanced Trima troubleshooting class. This is Alan Ackerman. He is actually from Trima. He came up from Columbus, Ohio. We've been going around the whole entire state this week, doing the same presentation for everyone. I will let you know this is being recorded.
Oh.
But this will be playback at a later date, so just be mindful of what language is used during this presentation. Otherwise, Alan will take it from here. If you have questions throughout, just speak up. But it's really fun and engaging when we all can talk together.
All right. Good afternoon. I'm not sure if those of you on Teams heard that. My name is Alan Ackerman. I am in my 21st year with this company, working with Trima the entire time. I support all of Versity and about 20 other blood centers throughout the Great Lakes and Midwest. Can those of you on Teams hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine.
Perfect, thank you. What happened to our screen?
Oh, well, it's better this time.
Okay. All right. My job is training, troubleshooting, optimization, productivity for collections. As you can see in front of you, there's not a Trima, although those don't count over there. All right. So you'll see that this is going to be unfortunately death by PowerPoint. All right. You guys will get a copy of this presentation. I think Katie will send it out to those of you from the Michigan team right after this meeting or tomorrow. All right. So you'll have access to every one of these slides. I'm not going to read all these. I hope you guys interact throughout. As I mentioned, I support all Versity. This is the last week. This is the 5th week that we've been doing this for all the different regions. There are some people on teams from other regions as well. Those of you on Teams, though, the data that is going to be shown in here is going to be Michigan-specific data, okay? My role is, in addition to training and troubleshooting, is also the liaison between you guys and management. So management's always asking you guys to do more, okay? I know what's realistic. You guys know what's realistic. That's not why I'm here. My job today, for you guys on this call today and in person, is to find some way to help you impact a procedure for either you as an operator or a donor or even a product to help get a little bit more out, okay? It may not necessarily result in another product, but maybe it'll result in a better experience for you or a donor, okay? There is a lot of experience in the Versity group. Some of you are newer, some of you have years. My job is to find something that you guys can find beneficial. We've done this training to about almost 300 people now. And every single person has said they've gotten something out of this. So I hope you guys are in that boat as well. All right. So here's our agenda, and we're just going to jump right into it. Whoa, that was fast. Hold on. All right. Needle stick assessment and infiltrations. The term needle stick assessment, is that something you guys have heard before? A couple of you, yeah? All right. All of you have probably heard that term. You may not remember it. It may be told to you in a different type of terminology. You may know what it is. And once you see it up here, you'll understand what I'm talking about. As adults, when we're trained, we only retain about 57% of what somebody teaches us. What you might remember is going to be different than the person right next to you. So coming back and sharing some things like this, showing you what might be beneficial, is good to fill in those gaps that you guys might be missing. When do infiltrations occur? They're usually related to the stick. So that's not me sitting up here saying you're a bad phlebotomist, all right? You guys all have donors that come in that some of them have the worst veins in the world, and you happen to be the one that has to deal with that donor today, okay? When we talk about the stick, it's the entire situation. It's what the donor brought you, your ability, and everything you have to work to try to make the procedure go. Not always at high flows, okay? Are you guys standing next to the Trima for that first cycle? All right. How slow are those pumps going? Really slow, right? Do you sometimes have problems then? Yeah. So not always at high flows. It can happen at any time during the procedure, depending on what's going on. And then there's oftentimes associated with low access pressures, sometimes high return pressures. Okay. Trima is considered the highest flow device on the market. So what does that mean? That needle is actually fluctuating in and out. And it's not moving this much as those in the room can see my hand moving. That's kind of exaggeration. But during the draw and return, that needle is actually being sucked in and pushed out. So if you don't place that needle in the right spot and it's up against the vein wall, that sharp point is slowly rubbing a hole into your vein wall. And that could be the indication of that procedure that failed halfway through that you didn't realize what was going on. Okay. So I hope we give you some tips here today to at least picture those and understand what's going on. 3 most common reasons for these infiltrations. Our screen changes a little slow. There we go. Poor vein selection or poor phlebotomy. Again, that could be the whole entire situation the donor brought you. Inattention to return pressure issues. We call it that bouncing into the yellow. That yellow could be the size of the vein. It's just pulsing because of the pressure. Or again, it could be because the needle's actually bouncing against the vein wall. All right. If it's a donor you've had for years and they're always running in that yellow, that's not really a concern for me. But if it's a new donor or somebody you don't have a lot of experience with, is that yellow something you should be concerned about? All right, something you should think about. Number 3, forgetting to adjust a tourniquet or blood pressure cuff. Most of you can say that doesn't happen very often, or it happens early on in your career. So it really points to number 1 and 2 being the main culprit for our issues. Okay, so back to our needle stick assessment. Let me get my laser pointer here. All right, over here on the left, this pressure bar is called our needle stick assessment tool. It's actually been on Trima for about 10 years. You may or may not have realized that that's actually there to help you. Ignore the color. So you'll see the color, the screen has 2 colors, a green at the top or blue, however you want to call it, and yellow. All that's doing is dividing it in half. Okay. So right now you're probably doing your phlebotomy, opening your clamps, filling your pouch, closing, sealing, open a blue clamp, and then you're going to hit start draw. After today, what I'd like you to do is when you open the clamp, count 1001, 1002, glance over here at the left, look and see where this pressure bar moves to. Now, if you have no flash or no flow, or this pressure bar stays at the very bottom, you already know you have a problem. But typically when you open up that clamp, that pressure bar is going to move somewhere. It's generally going to move to the middle. Sometimes it'll move higher, sometimes lower. What this is doing is opening up the donor's vein to the Trima device. This is the pressure that's at no flow. All right. So wherever that stabilizes to, that's your starting point. When you then hit start draw, if that bar moves more than 4, it's considered a bad needle stick. Okay. So what happens to the pumps when you hit start draw? All right. They start moving. Are they moving slow or fast? Slow. So if we're already moving 4 bars at slow speed, this is an indication of that donor that's going to be a problem when the pumps ramp up to faster speed. So if you already know there's problems at this slow speed, maybe there's something we can do to adjust, fix arm position, needle position to help improve this now before it speeds up. Okay. Now, some people tell me, well, I was always told as long as it stays in green, it's good. Again, the color doesn't mean anything. It's how far it moves from where it starts. So sometimes it might be at the top. Sometimes it might be at the bottom. It's how far it's moving from wherever it starts with the vein being open to the pressure to the clamp. Okay.
That's good to know.
Yeah. All right. Most normal sticks, it's going to move about 2, but it's where it's moving from is what's the critical piece there.
Oh.
Okay. So again, the color doesn't mean anything. I mean, we mentioned having it one color, but then at least it gives you a reference to see where the middle is, and that way you can watch. Okay. All right. So usually when I share the fact about how this works, I can come back to center and somebody will say, yeah, this helped me with a donor. All right. This isn't going to help you with every donor. All right. Sometimes you already know there's problems. This might help you with some of those ones in the middle that maybe you're not sure of. Maybe you think, oh, this might help me with somebody that I am having problems on. Okay. Comments or questions? Do you think this could be beneficial sometime? Maybe. All right. If you're the type of person that likes to read the steps that I just mentioned, the next slide actually has all that word for word for you. Okay. Next screen, what affects yield? For those of you that don't know what the term yield is your platelet target. That's that dose, single, double, triple. It's whatever value you're trying to target. There are a lot of things that affect yield, and we're going to talk about each of those. Okay. The biggest thing is anything that can disrupt your flow or centrifuge can stop our products from being collected as we want them to be. Okay. One of the things you'll hear from me today is I like analogies to real life. All right. So we'll talk about that. Centrifuge stopping. All right. Anything that can disrupt our centrifuge, disrupt our flow, is going to cause cells to go where we don't want them to go. That could be the product we wanting to collect not going into the bag, or that could be white cells and things we don't want to collect going into the bag that aren't supposed to be there. Stopping the centrifuge can cause that. Now, I like to start at the bottom one, machine centrifuge issues. Those are outside of your control, all right? Some of your devices in Versity are up to 18 years old. So we translate dog years, 18 years old, and machine years is about 100 years old, okay? Your machines are great, but some of them do break down because of their age and things like that. It's a mechanical device that we throw electric and tubing and moving parts and fluid. They wear out over time. So that's something that might be happening that's outside your control. Incorrectly set up tubing set. How many of you have never had a blood spill or never seen one? Okay. I haven't met anybody yet. I've had some people that have never had a blood spill, but they've all seen one, right? Don't be afraid to ask for a second check. Okay. But I will say you hope that your second check person actually does check you, because we're all human, mistakes happen. I mentioned I've been using Trima for 21 years. I had a blood spill in July last year. Okay. It happens. Doesn't matter how experienced you are. It's something that can happen. You just hope that your second check person also looks, and she did not. So we had a blood spill together. I will show you on the next screen what actually we missed. Okay. The only tip I can offer for that is if you do have a blood spill, or when you have a blood spill, clean it up right away. Dried blood is harder to clean up and it gets smellier. Okay. Tubing set issue. That one's our fault. All right. So I apologize now for any tubing set issue you may have had. Again, we're all human. And the reason why I concentrate on that, Trima is US based. Our machines are manufactured in Denver, Colorado. We are based out of the United States. So being a Great Lakes state, Midwest state, it's really neat for donors to understand that, hey, something still is made in the US. Our Trimas are made in the US. As we've gotten larger over the years, we now support over 150 countries worldwide from Colorado. That makes it difficult for us. So 6 years ago, we opened up a plant in Vietnam. And last year during COVID, we opened up one in Costa Rica. We have over 8,000 employees, and most of them are in our manufacturing facilities for our tubing sets. Our tubing sets are made by hand. Okay. So I mentioned the fact that humans make mistakes. Sometimes you guys will get a kit with a problem. So I apologize about that. Okay. We do take a lot of pride in our quality though. Up until December, we ran about 98% success rate. That 2% doesn't necessarily mean the kit is bad. It could mean a crooked sticker, a kink, a missing piece, things like that, or it could mean a broken tubing. That 10-digit lot number that you guys scan tells us which plant, which shift, which team, which person, which position affected that kit and manufactured that kit. So if you report in a problem, we'll go back and look at that location and that person to see if they did something wrong, or if it's a process error or something we can do to fix that for you so it doesn't happen again. Okay. So we do ask that you share if you see issues, something you don't like. You guys have internal processes to report that. We will never make you pay for a kit that we cause a problem on. All right. So if there's something wrong, we give you credit for it. Versity doesn't get charged for it. That helps you guys with your cash flow. All right. If it's something bad enough, we'll ask to have the kit sent back. A lot of times they'll just have you throw it away. Okay. Pictures. Every one of you probably have a cell phone or two. All right. Taking a picture of it can really do wonders in your documentation, and it can sometimes prevent you from having to send the kit back. All right. So just something to think about on that. But any of these things can stop the centrifuge and can potentially affect your product from passing. Now, what did I do? You see that little silver locking pin? Which way is that supposed to be? In or out? Out. It was in for me. So what happens when the centrifuge spins is that hex comes out and then spins and spins and spins until it rips it in half. Okay. That's not why I'm showing you the slide though. So I'm just sharing my experiences so that you're aware that, hey, we're all human, things happen. What I'm sharing the slide for, do you see the little indentation in the upper right-hand corner of the hex block? See my cursor there? It's a little hard to see. Okay. If you line up the hex that has the pink line to that indentation, you've loaded this correctly. If you rotate it clockwise, it causes the little tiny line to be on top. If you rotate it counterclockwise, it causes the pink line to be on top. And as the centrifuge is spinning, those lines are going to squish down on one on top of another, and it can disrupt the flow through there. So in the middle, what does that little line have attached to it?
Cone.
Little cone. Somebody beat you to it on here. That's okay. Good job. That is the LRS cone. What is in that cone? Platelets. And there's one other thing as well. White blood cells. Okay. We want to keep the white blood cells in there. We want the platelets to come out. So if you disrupt the flow by not setting this up correctly, you can keep the platelets from coming out and going to the bag as they're supposed to, or you can cause white cells to come out and go in the bag that are not supposed to and contaminate your product. Okay. The one on the right there, if the pink line's on top, that's all the blood coming in. It can actually disrupt all the flow of all your products and it can cause a product failure in any of them. Now, by itself, having this incorrectly loaded may not always cause a failure, but if you're having flow issues, donor issues, platelet count accuracy, hematocrit accuracy, or any other number of things, and you have this, all this stuff can stack up against you, potentially cause you to have a failure. So again, our job is to try to find something to help improve. And maybe if you didn't realize the importance of this, that can help you guys save a couple procedures here and there. Okay. Those of you that have been around for more than a few years and used Trima version 6 and older may remember we had a lot more draw and return alerts, right? A couple of you in this room have been around long enough to use version 6. When we went to version 7, we added some features to help remove some of those issues, okay? But you still have a few of them, right? So if we were able to eliminate draw and return issues, alerts, wouldn't it make your day a little bit easier? Maybe, okay? On the screen is an example of a real double red cell procedure in one of my customers, okay? How long is a typical double red cell procedure? 30 minutes, 25 to 35? Okay, you guys agree on the teams? This one was 1 hour. This was actually a double red cell validation procedure for one of my customers that failed for validation. When we investigated it, we found all these alert messages. Okay. There was actually another page of them. I just couldn't get them on the screen. This stop and go, okay, causes your cells to stop and go and not go where we want them to. So I like to compare this to construction traffic. You guys go down the highway here and there's a lane ending. If everybody just, every other car zippered together, everything would be smooth, right? That's not real life. Somebody wants to get in front or somebody's not going fast enough and it causes everything behind it to back up. Okay. Same thing happens with our cells while we're collecting. This stop and go causes some of them to speed up and get in front, some of these to slow down, and they go where they want to go, which doesn't end up being where we need them to. Okay. And in this case, it caused them to not collect enough red cells and it failed for low volume. Right. So this 30-minute procedure became an hour. Imagine if this was a 90 or 100-minute platelet procedure. Okay. It might add double the time, which could potentially kick you out of a split product, or it might cause you to have a contamination or just low yield because the cells aren't going where we want them to go. Okay. So what's that pointing to? Really important of a good venous access, right? Hitting continue doesn't do anything to fix the ultimate problem. Okay. Now, when we talked to that operator, she fully admitted to sitting there for the entire donation, hitting continue, doing nothing. She said, well, I lowered it down a couple times, but she did nothing to fix the issue that was causing all the flow rate problems. Okay. Now, that doesn't always guarantee a failure, but it's definitely not helping. And you know, the reason why I say that is Katie shared a procedure that happened last month here at one of the Michigan centers. Okay, I'm not calling out any centers. Okay. That actually had 10 pages of alarms from the Vista report. and it was a red cell. It did pass, but that procedure had I stopped counting at 50 alerts and I wasn't all the way through. Okay. This one that was on the screen had 50 alerts. All right. None of you want to sit there and hit continue. You have other things to do, right? Right. So hitting continue doesn't fix it, maybe once or twice, but continually having to do that isn't fixing what's causing it. So it really points to trying to work on some donor management items. There's a really long delay, so I apologize. Okay. I'm not going to go through all of these, but we're going to talk about quite a few. All right, down towards the bottom. We do not recommend taping on the butterfly. So remember, I started off the conversation with Trima is considered one of the highest flow devices. You might start out with the best needle stick in the world, and then you tape it down incorrectly, and now you've pitched up that needle and it's dragging across your vein. All right, that could cause you to have an infiltration because of how you taped it down. All right. Is your donor awake? Donors are not allowed to sleep while donating. It's actually against FDA rules. If an inspector comes in and sees your donor sleeping, you guys will be cited for it. Now, I'm not necessarily going to pick on you for that, okay? Because I myself am a Trima donor and I've been known to sleep, all right? But if your donor is beeping and alarming and having issues and they're sleeping, wake them up. Especially if they're that donor that says, hey, why am I on for so long? Well, it's because you're sleeping and you're not squeezing and you're adding time to your procedure, okay? All right. Speaking of squeezing, all right, how do you guys educate your whole blood donors on squeezing? Every 5 to 10 seconds. What can you tell your Trima donors? Exactly the same thing, all right? 5 to 10 seconds, 10 to 15 seconds. Some of them are able to roll, okay? They can squeeze through the return. Infiltrations do not happen because the donor's squeezing in return. Infiltrations happen because the needle's not where it's supposed to be, okay? So a donor can squeeze throughout, but then it also means they don't need to worry about what the screen says. Okay. Now, not being able to see the screen as an operator is actually considered a donor safety concern. Who's running the procedure? You or the donor? You guys. Okay. I'm going to have about 5 different reasons in this presentation today why you guys should have the machine turned towards you and not the donor. If having it be told as a donor safety issue isn't enough, then hopefully I can find something else to help convince you to keep the machine turned towards you. Okay. So if the donor's squeezing throughout, they don't need to see what's on the screen, whether it's in draw or return, they don't need to concentrate on it. All right. Trima is actually fighting the donor's heart during the blood cycles. So we return blood back to the donor. The heart is pumping the blood away right away. If that donor stops squeezing in the return and they don't start squeezing fast enough when it switches back, those veins are collapsing in between the cycles because all the blood's going away. So if the donor is squeezing throughout, it keeps the vein full for both cycles, and it has that less of a tendency to collapse in between the draw and return. Okay. Now, if they're not worrying about the screen, okay, then they don't have to see it. But you guys have conditioned some of your donors to look at the screens. You know, that's how we've trained them over the years. Some of what I'm teaching you today kind of contradicts what you may have learned for those of you that have been here for 10 years. Okay. We are continually learning. Changes in our software, the addition of autoflow. All right, it's actually best for your donor to squeeze throughout than to stop and start throughout the different cycles. Okay. Now, sometimes when we do this to donors, they say, well, I need to see the time on the screen. There are 14 clocks in your donor room and everybody has a phone. They don't need to see the clock on the screen. They think they do because, again, you've conditioned them. Okay. All right. 2 big things you guys can impact in the donor room on the day of donation. Educating on hydration. Okay, how many of you can say you drink 8 glasses of 8 ounces of non-caffeinated, non-alcohol daily? I got a couple nods in here, right? I got a lot of no's. 3 out of 4 people do not hydrate correctly. Now, I'm not allowed to say the term dehydrated because that's a medical term. So we say not hydrate sufficiently, right? You guys represent your donors coming in the door. So 3 out of your 4 donors coming in the door aren't hydrated correctly. We can do everything we can to educate them, but whether or not to do it, it's up to them. Hydration is not the morning of or on the way in the door. Hydration is either continuous or a few days ahead of time. And you guys know which donors aren't doing it correct. They're the ones that come in the door, hang up with a coat, and run to the restroom right away. because they remembered to hydrate on their way there or that morning, and your body wants to get rid of the liquid as fast as you bring it in. So if you spread it out, your body will maintain and absorb it more. If you drink it really fast, it wants to get rid of it really fast. Okay. Now, if your donors won't hydrate to help you with your phlebotomy, maybe they'll hydrate because a better hydrated donor is less susceptible to anticoagulant issues. So maybe they don't like those Tums, right? Maybe they can't do calcium or do things to help improve that. But if they hydrate a little bit more, maybe it'll help them with their anticoagulant issues, right? And then in turn, it can help you with your phlebotomy, right? So you guys can speak to your blue in the face. Sometimes it may not convince a donor, but knowing what is a benefit there is important for you guys. The last thing I want to talk about is keeping your donor warm. I'm generally the only male in the room, so I like to pick on our gender, but we are stupid. We will normally not admit to being cold and will freeze to death before we tell you that. Don't ask questions to get you yes, no answers. Just put a blanket on them and tell them you want to do that to keep you warm so you don't cool down during the procedure. It is much easier to keep a donor warm than it is to warm them up after they start alarming. So you might have the best needle stick, and then as that donor starts cooling down, they're sitting in that chair, they're getting room temperature solution. The body wants to keep the core and the organs warm. It starts pulling heat from the extremities where that needle is, and now it's closing down on your needle, and now it's going to start alarming. Then you're going to spend the next 20 minutes warming that donor back up. Had you kept them warm from the beginning, you would have less time doing that and less time slowing the machine down. Okay? Thoughts or comments on that?
Started using heating pads like every time
Yes.
at a city, and it's been doing wonders
Exactly.
for donors.
And it's great that you actually noticed that. A lot of times we're like, oh, I don't want to do that. It doesn't make a difference. But the fact that you are and you notice it and you can see a difference, and if your donors do, it really makes a difference.
Well, I worked over here at Saginaw on Sunday, and there was this donor that was like, I'm gonna add about 30 minutes because I told him it's time. And I was like, has anyone ever put a warm blanket on your arm? And he's like, no. So I put the warm blanket with the heating pad on his arm, and he didn't add any time at all.
And, not to call out Saginaw, but sometimes donors here might tell them no.
Right,
And it's not the fact that nobody's tried.
right.
They have, but donors will also translate what they feel is important for the conversation at that time. And so just being proactive and doing it and not giving them a choice, a lot of times is just better. And, explain to them what they're doing. They may not be cold right this minute, but they will be in a few minutes, and you want to prevent that from happening. Okay. With Trima version 7, we always making some improvements. We made some changes to draw and return alerts. Okay, we take the feedback from our operators and donors and customers to make changes to make it better for you. So those of you that may have been around for version 6 and previous versions may remember all of our screens and alerts all sounded the same. Okay, so if you got a draw return alert, you'd have to come over and read the screen, take the time to figure out what it is, and then react. With your most two common alerts that you see on Trima, we changed the way they look and sound to help you understand what's going on as you approach the device. Draw pressure low, the donor is on the right-hand side with a red background. Return pressure high, the donor's on the left side with a blue background. I came from a dialysis background. We actually used the rhyme blue to you to show you what the return side was. So you can see that blue background as you're approaching the screen. You can see, hey, that's a return issue because it has a blue background. In addition to the way these screens look, we changed the sounds for these two messages. Draw is a low pressure, so it has a low tone when it sounds. Return is a high pressure, so it has a high pitch when it sounds. So in addition to how it looks, you guys can actually hear it and actually see what it's doing to the donor before you even get over there, and you can react much faster and get the flow back going. Okay. Highlighted in the red box is a pressure display box. If you press that button, and that's available for these two messages here, it actually overlay right on top of your screen the pressure box. So if your donor's moved or there's something causing you not to be able to hit the continue button, you need to make a needle adjustment at that point, you can actually put the pressure screen on your screen right in front of you, see the impact of your adjustment without having to be blindly adjusting, and you can see if it made a difference before you hit continue, or at least hopefully get to continue back. Okay. Specifically for the return pressure high messages, all right, when you hit continue, the flow rate is going to be at 50% speed. So in the event that maybe something happened, you had to make an adjustment, the donor's arm moved, maybe you've compromised the vein. When we hit that pump to continue to get the pump going, we go back at a slower rate. So you don't potentially cause an infiltration or hematoma at the fast return cycle. So it'll be at a slower speed for that first return before it goes back to fast speed for the next cycle. Okay. So all that's based on feedback from many years of operators telling us, hey, these would be beneficial for us. This screen here shows the 5 most frequent alerts in the last calendar, floating calendar we have. So March to February. For those of you on teams from other Versity centers, these are the same 5 alert messages you guys are seeing there. The only difference is they may be in a different order or they may have a different percentage, but they're all the same for all of Versity regions. The majority of our other Trima customers have the top 5 similar items as well. Okay. So you guys aren't doing or seeing anything different than any other customer. Okay. The one thing I will point out is top one, donation time increase and maximum procedure duration exceed at the bottom. We're going to talk about those 2 again in a few minutes. All right. 4 of these 5 are related to access, phlebotomy, and donor management. So you'll sense a trend in a lot of stuff that we talk about today are all related to dealing with those 4 items. Are you going to make these go away? No, but hopefully we can make them better for you and find ways to make these numbers lower. Really, really long delay today. Get speed bumps and detours, usually related to your donor, things outside your control. All right, we can make some adjustments for it. How many of you will tie down your donor's hand or arm? I get a couple people saying yes. Okay. They ask, yes. Now, depending on who you talk to, this is a very deep conversation from certain people. The concern is if you rely on just tying the donor's arm, you may not have tried to do all the other things first to make the donor comfortable in the right position, right? So making sure you do that. Tying down a donor is generally as a last resort, but as a donor who has to put their arm in a very compromising position for 2 hours, I request to have my arm taped down kind of as a reminder. All right. It also can relieve a little bit of stress on there. I mean, it does wonders, even though it's not tied down. It's kind of just helping me realize, okay, I don't have to fight so hard to remember. And it can help make a donor relax a little bit. But I would always ask permission for some people. Okay. One of your colleagues at your Kalamazoo Center sneezed while he donated and pulled his arm up. And so, he asked to have his arm taped down because he's a sneezer. So he wants to make sure his arm doesn't move. Okay. If your donors are a little more Italian, maybe you want to tie their arm down a little bit too, different things, but it's just something to think about.
Don't. Much because he talks his arms. So he has us tie it down.
Yep.
So he can talk to us because he has to talk.
There you go. So that brings us into the adjust screen. All right. So each of these items on the adjust screen are going to be a 1 or 2 and assess. Okay. How would you know if you didn't fix the issue with 1 or 2? Were you maybe doing a whole bunch of unnecessary adjustments? Okay. So we're going to talk about each of these. Draw flow. That button is used to adjust the draw or inlet pump. Each time you lower it down, it slows the flow by 5 mils per minute. Now, what I shouldn't see is somebody coming in here and lowering it down 10 times. Okay. That's just masking the issue. However, that's not me saying don't ever make adjustments. Make them for the right reason and understand your impact. Maybe you needed to lower it down 10 times so that you could get your flow moving enough to try to save it. But then as an operator, it's your responsibility to then move it back up. Okay. You don't want to go back up 10 times initially. You want to go up a couple and assess and see how the vein handles it. But you as the operator needs to move it back up if you do that. But really, do you need to move it down 10 times for an issue? Okay. Can you do those other items of donor management to help improve that? And Trima version 7, we added a feature called autoflow. So those of you that are Alex trained, Alex has a similar item where it makes adjustments. The difference is on Trima, it only makes adjustments on the draw side. Okay. Now, one additional item is something you may not realize. Autoflow is not activated on double red cell or plasma procedures. It's only activated on platelet collections. Okay. So if you're thinking it's going to make changes for you during double red cell, it does not, right? The indicator for auto flow are these little boxes below the pressure alarm, pressure screen, okay? These are our last 3 draw cycles. Thank you. This shows up on all of ours. All right, the last 3 draw cycles are in these boxes. Did you hang up on everybody? Okay. The most current or the recent one is the one on the right. Okay. Green means we stayed the same or we sped up. Orange, red, orange, whatever color you want to call that, means Trima has slowed the flow down. Okay. How fast are our cycles on Trima? Pretty fast, right? Sometimes they're as fast as 30 seconds. If this screen is turned towards the donor, you may not even realize that Trima is slowing the flow down. But if you have it turned towards you and you're monitoring your donor and looking at it from across the room, you can see that this orange box appears. You can know that Trima is slowing the flow down. Maybe there's something you can do to help improve the situation. Okay. Trima will slow the flow down if there are 3 access events in 3 minutes. It will slow it down by 1 adjustment. If there are no access events in 5 minutes, then it will try to speed it back up. Okay. So what are considered access events? There are actually 3 of them. The first one's really easy. We just had it on a previous screen. Flashing red lights, audible tone, red message, pumps are paused. Really easy. There's a continue button. Operator, you know there's a draw issue. Second one's not as common, a little bit harder. Those same things, flashing lights, audible tone. The pumps are not paused, but they're slowed. They're actually running at 50%. Okay, that one doesn't happen very often, but you still have a continue button on the screen. All right, so that's considered an access event. The third one, which you may not realize is actually an access event, is where most of your concerns and issues are that you may not realize, is that audible chirp where the pump pauses for a second. There's a little squeeze icon. Pressure comes back, the pumps resume. You don't have to come over and hit continue because the pressure came back and it resumed, but that's still considered an access event. 3 of those will slow your pump down. All right, that's adding time to your procedure. If you get 3 of those pauses, it's still an access event. It's going to slow your Trima down. So if you don't happen to see the screen because it's turned towards the donor and Trima is slowing those donations down for you, that could be a reason why you're getting kicked out of some of your procedures and may not even realize it. Okay. So again, another plug for having the screen turned towards you so that you can actually see what's going on as you're working in the donor room. Question?
Does it chirp every time there's one event, like one cycle?
Correct.
One orange cycle?
Well, anytime you get that alert, it chirps.
Okay.
So if you get
Cycle.
a bunch of those chirps, it's going to chirp each time.
Okay.
Yeah, but somebody called it like a bird tweeting, you know, whatever you want to call it. It makes that little bit of a beep. You know, we call it chirping. I don't know, whatever you feel comfortable calling it. But yes, every time it does that, it chirps.
We're just making sure it doesn't just make or have a change in the cycle lower at 5 mils.
Yeah, if you get 3 of those chirps, then it'll lower the 5 mils down.
Okay.
Yeah.
But for each
Not each
draw
chirp.
return cycle, if it's orange, it's gonna
Yep,
be.
so if you get 3 events, it doesn't matter if it's back to back or within 3 minutes, it's going to slow it down and it tells you that by changing that orange. Okay. You might get that beep in 3 different draw cycles, but the fact that it's within 3 minutes, then Trima is going to slow that flow down. Okay. Now, once it switches to return and back to draw, this orange box will move to the middle. Switches to return back to draw, that orange box will move to the middle. Switch to return again and back to draw, it moves off the screen. So if you have donors who are running pretty fast and in 3 minutes, that orange box will disappear. So if you're not seeing your screen, you may not realize that that's happening in the background, slowing it down. And Trima is just slowly slowing your flow down for you. And that could be the reason why you're getting kicked out of some procedures. Okay. If you're the type of person that likes to read the steps I just mentioned out loud, the next slide has those steps. Okay. Come on, there we go. Now, if Trima continues to slow down and add time to your procedure, you're going to get this message. Okay. Donation time increase. If you see this message, it means it has added 10 minutes to your procedure time. If you're getting this three times in a procedure, that's 30 minutes that is added to that procedure time. Okay. Now the yellow message is an advisory. The pumps are still running, all right, but it does chirp momentarily to tell you, hey, there's a message there. If you get another access event before you come acknowledge this, then it actually pauses the pump, starts beeping at you and gives you the red message. Okay. A lot of times people say, well, I don't ever see the yellow message. If your screen's turned toward the donor, you're never going to see the yellow message. But more than likely, if you're adding procedure time because of these messages, another access event happened before you saw the yellow one and went right to red. Okay. Now remember, on the top 5 alert messages, this message is coming up over 20% of your procedures. Okay. So in 20% of your donation procedures in your center, you guys are actually seeing this message, and that means we're adding 10 minutes to your procedure time. Okay. So if you have a donation that's really long and we add 10 minutes to it, it may now shorten to a double because procedure time is exceeding our maximum time limit. All right. If you continue to get those messages and or get to the maximum time limit, Trima is going to give you the maximum duration exceeded message. Trima will sit here in a pause mode, alerting at you, and it makes you push the procedure selection button. And at that point, you have to choose a new procedure. Now you'll notice highlighted in a red box there, the adjust screen is there. You can speed the pumps back up to try to get your split product available. But if you didn't fix the underlying issue, this is just going to repeat again. Okay. Now, one thing to note, Trima will never choose a procedure on its own or automatically. Somebody has to choose it. So we've had operators say, well, Trima chose a procedure for me. Somebody chose it. It may not have been you, but somebody did confirm a procedure and move it on to that next run. Okay. But Trima will never do anything other than sit here and beep at you till you make a decision. All right. I'm going to go back a couple slides. One more. There we go. On our main run screen, do you guys see a little box in the right there with the bag on it? Okay. If autoflow has gotten faster, you'll say you had to slow it down and then you made adjustments, the donor calmed down, and now it's able to go faster. If you've gotten faster and a procedure is now available because it is faster, this one bag will become 2. It'll light up a little bit, but it doesn't beep. It does anything other than change the screen there slightly. Now telling you as an operator that something is now available. It again is never going to choose something for you, but it's telling you, hey, it's there. If you want to push this button and go in and choose it, you can as the operator. Okay. Now, again, here's another plug for the screen being turned towards you. If you can't see that, you're never going to notice that that bag appears. Question?
Say the product gets dropped and then that pops back up. When you get, say you had a triple and it dropped down to a double and that little window up to, I can pop it, it can go back to the triple.
Yes. So the question in the room was, say we started out as a triple, then we slowed down and lost our triple. If the flow rate comes back, yes, that will turn to 2 bags because if it has come back that wasn't there, it will show up as that. Now, if you started out as a triple and lowered it down to a double and it never disappears, it's never going to show that that's available because it was available already. It loses it and then it comes back, it will change to 2 bags.
So it's basically, say we get the alarm and we have to pick, we have to choose a different procedure. We choose the different procedure, we still have a chance for the triple to come back.
Yep. If you're early enough in the procedure, you can't get any time back because you can't turn back the clock. But if you get the speed back enough where it's running faster, then it may come back. You can have the ability to choose it again. So that's why I always say is, can you make something better? Slow it down to fix your issue, but once things are calmed down, maybe you've done something to fix what's going on. If you get the flow rate back up to speed, you may be able to get your split product back that you lost. Okay. So maybe that's the one thing that you get out of this training is I didn't know I could do that. There you go. And there's been a few people this week that have actually said, I didn't know we could do that. So
There's, we could switch products.
Yeah.
But I didn't know that if it decreased, we could bring it back up.
Yeah. The next adjust button is return flow. What value do you see on the screen there? 30. It's a much bigger number, right? That's the larger pump at the top. That's your return pump. So lowering that one down 2, 3, 4 times can really impact your time by adding, slowing the pumps down. So again, do you need to do that many adjustments, or is there something else you can do to fix that? Next one, AC reaction. Reaction is a key word here. This is the donor side. Okay. This button affects what the donor is getting or needing to get. All right. So what are some typical AC reactions you guys see in the donor floor? Tingling, cramping, sneezing. Okay. What is the anticoagulant actually doing? What is its job?
Calcium and
Okay.
cloudy, right?
Correct. Yep. So it's preventing clotting, and it does that by binding to the calcium. So in the clotting cascade, we need calcium in 3 of the 5 stages for the clotting cascade. So essentially the anticoagulant puts a blanket on the calcium so you can't consume it or use it, and it prevents it from clotting. What use does your body use calcium for besides bone growth and bone use? Now only, we up to 4? Only 3 people so far in all my varsity trainings have been able to answer this question. Okay, so don't feel bad if you don't know. The main use for calcium is muscle movement. What is your most important muscle in your body? Your heart. So think about the locations of your reaction. So tingly lips, cramping in fingers and toes, they're far away from the heart. But if you have cramping moving up the legs or things happening in the core area, those are considered more serious. Now, I'm not meaning this to be shocking or scary for you, just making you aware of what's going on. So sneezing is actually considered a more severe reaction because that's the diaphragm lungs area closer to the heart. Okay. So have you ever given Tums to a donor and the reaction went away immediately? Those are considered psychosomatic reactions. You could have given them a piece of candy and it would have fixed their reaction. Tums take about 10 minutes to actually have an effect on the calcium loss. All right. Now don't stop giving Tums to those donors because you're still potentially preventing a reaction, but that'll help you understand which are real reactions that you should manage and which ones are ones that you can keep giving them some Tums for. Okay. Now, if they're cramping up the body or sneezing, right? Most of the time sneezing happens partway through the procedure, but there are a couple times where it happens very early. That's because the body's getting tired of the lack of calcium and they're kind of doing spasms to try to get something to react to it. Okay. So giving Tums to those owners aren't really going to do much. That's where doing an AC reaction adjustment is much more impactful and instantaneous at that point, and what you should do for those type of donors. Okay.
No, if that happens to
Don't
me,
put
do
Tom,
that.
don't.
So if you're also using 6 and 7 Tums, I think you guys actually have a limit of 7 in your SOP, but it's dependent on the size of your Tums tablet.
I don't think that we had a limit anymore.
There is a limit. It's 3,500 milligrams. So it depends on the size of your Tums. If they're a standard Tums, they're 500, you can do 7. It's 3,500 milligrams. So whatever that translates to, whatever you're giving them. But if you're giving them that right away, then it might be better to actually look at this as an adjustment versus feeding them a bunch of Tums. Because again, that's not really having an effect on them very quickly. Myself, I'm a donor who does have reactions to it. I'll ask for Tums in the screening booth, so that way I can get it in sooner to help. Okay,
So then taking a Tums before reaction can actually help.
they can, yes. So if you have a donor who knows they have reactions, and it sounds like you're one over there, taking it earlier to help get ahead of it. Right. So educating your donor on calcium. So earlier, some people said donors will do milkshakes. Okay, but that. Yep. Do you have some Wisconsin people on? Wisconsin actually gets their donors string cheese. All right. We've asked Bradley to ship down some string cheese, but every time I say that, he hangs up the phone. So I don't know if they're not going to give you some. I would think they'd have a discount up there.
We've already got a milkshake
Yeah, let's get a milkshake
Yeah.
machine.
machine at the center.
Well, maybe you guys can go get something with McDonald's for like coupons to get to your donors. So here's a free milkshake for your donation, something to work with them.
Their ice cream machine is never working though.
It's never working. That is true. That is true. Sorry. Okay, well then maybe Wendy's or Burger King, get a Frosty,
There we
something
go.
else. Okay. Just educating your donor on a higher calcium diet can be helpful. Now keep in mind, a higher calcium diet can also leach your iron. So you have to be careful what you promote to certain donors. It can affect them from qualifying for their iron. Okay,
So like if they have higher iron normally,
it might be okay. So if they have lower iron and then you tell them to drink a bunch of milkshakes, they may actually fail for hematocrit. So just keep that in mind. That's why giving them something at the time of donation is less impactful for their iron because they've already passed that portion and it's not going to be an issue. Okay. Now, as I mentioned earlier, better hydration can also help. Okay. But you can also just lower the AC reaction down for them. Okay.
yeah, we can, a lot of our donors, we can talk to the ear about hydrating and that don't.
Yeah, exactly. Food really reacts to a lot of people's minds and, hey, bring a yogurt in or something and eat that while you're waiting in the, canteen. Simple as that. That way you guys don't even have to invest in anything. If you tell them what helps them, a lot of donors will do that for you without you having to worry about it. Okay. System AC, that's the last one. So the other one, AC reaction, was donor. System AC is product. They do not affect one another, other than they may change a few mils over the course of the procedure. But system AC is for the product system side. Okay. Question we had earlier in the week is somebody said we refrain from making system AC button issues because it causes donor reactions. The reason why it might cause a reaction is if the donor's not hydrated enough, we're making the procedure longer. They're getting AC for a longer period of time, and their body's getting tired of the AC. But this should not cause a reaction to them for AC issues. Okay. The system AC concentrates the AC into the tubing set and not back to the donor. So you're going to use it for two reasons: lack of swirl or excessive clumps. If you don't have any swirl, verify you didn't close off both platelet bags. Right? Verify that your tubing's not kinked. Right? If that's an issue and you have liquid, all right, check to make sure you don't see swirl. If you don't, increase the system AC by 1 time. Okay. Now the number of donors you have to do this on is about 1 to 3%. So if you yourself do 100 procedures and you're doing this on 10 donors, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. And all you're doing is adding time to a procedure. Okay.
So what does that specifically do when there isn't swirl?
So mentioned that it's for the same thing. Well, lack of swirl usually means that your clumps are forming down in the centrifuge where you can't see them.
Okay.
So I said it's for the same reason. One is for visible clumps, one is for not visible clumps because they're clumping down in the centrifuge.
Okay.
Okay. So when you add more AC to it, it actually loosens those platelets up and allows them to come up out of the tubing set.
That
Okay.
makes sense.
All right. So talking about the clumping side, okay. If you see aggregates, floaties, snowflakes, all right, one of my colleagues says this is where you do a platelet happy dance because that means you have platelets. Okay. Our only concern is if they're excessive. Excessive means they look like oatmeal or cottage cheese. And I don't mean foggy because they're like pink. This means there's chunks in there. All right. Now, what I want you to do is don't go up and hit them, shake them, or flick them. Run your hand over the bag. If those clumps fall apart, they're considered friendly. You don't need to do anything with friendly clumps. It is okay if there's clumps in there. They are going to go away with rest and agitation. Your lab typically doesn't even do anything with these for 24 hours. So they have time for the clumps to be dissipating. So, and I don't know where everybody on the teams is. You guys here are at a remote site to your lab. You're going to let your platelets rest. Then you're going to pack them into a shipping container. They're going to drive down the highway, agitating because of your bumpy roads, all the way to Grand Rapids to the lab. They're getting agitated that way. And then they're going to sit in an agitator in the lab before they actually do anything with them. So friendly clumps are going to go away on their own. If they're friendly and you add more AC to it, all you're doing is adding time to your donation. So it's not necessary.
So basically, when we run our thumbs on it, our fingers on it, our hands, and it doesn't disappear,
Then that's considered excessive. So what she said is if she runs her hands over it and they don't fall apart, those are considered excessive and you would need to add AC. Not everybody can hear you guys on the speakers, so I'm repeating what you're saying. No, it's okay. All right. Back to the swirl. I know you guys have a swirl check. Currently, it's stated in your SOP to do that at 20 minutes. 20 minutes for some of your donors means there's no product. 20 minutes for other donors, they might be halfway through their collection. Okay, so 20 minutes may not always be the best for you guys. I don't want you to change that. However, I want you to look at it at a different time potentially also. When you've collected, where's my cursor? When you've collected a 1.0, okay, I want you to look for swirl at that point. There's enough volume. It's really easy to see swirl at that point. It's early enough in the procedure. If you have to make an adjustment for system AC, it will help. Okay. Once it gets to 2 and higher, there's a lot of plasma. It makes it more difficult for you to see swirl. Okay. I want you to remember that number because we're going to reference it again a little bit later. This is what our Trima pump flows look like. Now, this was a manufactured procedure, so it's a platelet plasma red cell in 42 minutes. Now, I know Michigan does these types of procedures, but the rest of Versity doesn't do all three together. Okay. But we have our ramping at the front, our platelet plasma, our platelet by itself, and then our red cells. And that's the order that Trima typically collects. And that's what it would look like here. Now, this 42-minute procedure. Go. There we go. If you make an adjustment, slow something down at the beginning of the procedure while it's ramping, it's going to slow everything down. It's not going to continue ramping as it was supposed to, and it's going to add time. Okay. This 42-minute procedure became 58 minutes. So imagine if this was a 90 or 100-minute platelet procedure and you did that, it's going to double your time potentially, and you wouldn't be able to run that procedure, and it's going to kick you out of split. Now, this is not me saying don't ever make an adjustment, right? If you need to, please do, but fix what's going on. But you as the operator would then have to speed it back up. With the addition of autoflow every 5 minutes, you'll see it try to speed up. But if you wait for Trima to make adjustments from an early adjust beginning, you're never going to get all your procedure time back. So you as an operator needs to go in and actually speed it up so that you can actually get something back. Okay. Does that make sense? All right. I have a mini pop quiz. And I would like everybody on the phone on Teams to also answer, unless you've been on one of my calls before. Please tell me what your most important sensor is on Trima. Who should we pick on? Heather, your name's on my screen. What do you think? Brianne? Jason, Claire, Michael, any of you?
Is it the RBC
Okay,
detector?
got a vote for reservoir? Got 2 votes for reservoir. RBC detector? Got a vote for RBC detector? What was that? RBC again? Okay, all right. See? Okay, got a vote for centrifuge. I got another for centrifuge on Teams. What'd you say over there? I didn't hear you. I got a vote for return. What'd you say back there? Another one for draw return. So important. However, one of them 4 jobs. So that's why it makes one of them stand out. That one is actually the RBC detector. Okay, so the very first job the RBC detector does, it looks at the kit. It looks at that sticker. So you see the white sticker on the screen. Did you know there's 2 stickers? Do you know what color the others? Nose in here. Does anyone know what the second is? If I put all of you to color sticker is actually black. Do we know the difference between a white stamp kit and a kit? White stamp means it's platelet capable. Black stamp means it's not platelet capable. So your not platelet capable are plasma only and double red cell. Okay. So along with this sticker and that 5-digit reference code, tells Trima which procedures and which products we can collect on this tubing set. So that's the very first job the RBC detector does. What was its name again? RBC detector. Second job, looking for red cells on it. So if you're unsure what the RBC detector is, it's the one with the red and green light. That goes over green light is our platelet line. We want red cells in that platelet line. What else do we want in our platelet product? Blood cells. So the third job is looking for white cells. Before I get to the job, we're going to talk about LRS clearing. I mentioned again, I like analogies. So I like to compare the LRS clearing to an oil change car. Every 3,000, 10,000, or for some of us, whenever we're doing it miles, we change on our filter in our car. LRS stands for liquid reduction. That's that little cone centrifuge. It's not actually, it's actually completely hollow, right? But the way it's going to fill up cells, and we don't want to put them in our plate, but it's going to fill up over a certain blood volume. It is not fine. It's on blood going through it. On the left is our old version. We used to use Trima then, remember we had clearings happening 2, 3, and 4 times. We did clearings, we would send plasma down into the centrifuge, backwards into that cone, pushing those plates backwards into the centrifuge. When I those white cells went cone again. We did a very bad cleaning those out in our old version software. That's the screen on the right now. Instead of pushing anything backwards, we completely flush everything out forward, sending it all back to the donor, completely making it like an oil change with everything brand new. And because we can eliminate 1, 2, or 3 clearings for many donors. Each of these clearings run about 5 minutes long. So losing 1, 2, or 3 clearings might mean we have 5 to 10 minutes or even 15 minutes of donation time that we can give back to the donor, either making their donation shorter with version 7 or allowing them to process more blood to actually collect product off of. Now, because of how we changed that, in about 25% of procedures, it might look like a red cell spillover. So we decided we wanted to put a message on the screen to tell you that it's doing it. Okay. Now, again, if you have this turned towards the donor, you might not actually see this message, or your donor's telling you to hit this off the screen so that you can see behind it. My recommendation is to actually leave this on the screen. Okay. When it's done, it will go away on its own. Now, why I say leave it on the screen is there's usually multiple operators working in the room at the same time. If you hit close and then go to another donor or go to the restroom, and another person comes over and they don't see the message, but they notice a red tint, it might be a moment of panic and says, I'm in a red cell spillover. Okay. And you might want to try to do also disable the RBC spillover button so you can't push it. But if you just leave the screen, everybody knows what's going on. It'll okay. Now we talked about these LRS clearings, these oil changes. When you choose a platelet procedure from the very beginning, we know if we're going to do it. So on the screen here, the blue message, that is a scheduled thing that we knew was going to happen for this donation because we knew how much blood would go through that cone. So that was expected and yellow on the was because our RBC detector detected a concentration of white cells that weren't supposed to be there. It says, hey, we have cells escaping. Our cone must be free to rinse them out during that's not scheduled. And that one's going to add time to your. Regardless of message that comes up, they're going to go away when they're done. Breaking up. I'm sorry. What do I do to fix that? It might be a connection. What's that? Sign language? We're all done for the day, aren't we? Guys, I'll speak more clearly into the speaker, maybe. Yeah. Okay. So again, if you have this turned towards you, you can see if this was something that expected and plan ready for tagging your products, or at least understand You as an auditor, there's not really anything you can do to prevent this. However, you put in a hematocrit or your hemoglobin or do a finger stick incorrectly, put that in, you can protect that if the finger stick value is off by too much. Okay. Generally speaking, there's nothing you guys can do that can sort of prevent it. It's needed to the donor. Fourth job. Last look for is platelets. So I like to compare how the RBC detector works to flashlight puppets. So if you guys have ever, made shadow puppets with flashlight on the wall, okay, RBC detector is looking at the size and shape of the shadow against it. So use green light, reflect that white stick. If it's a yellow, it says it's a red. If it's a shadow, it says it's a white. If it's a small shadow, it's a platelet. If there's no shadow, it's plasma. Okay, and if it detects it, then it'll put up the appropriate message. If there's one thing I dislike about it, it's the logic behind this message right. If you see this message telling you that you 50% that you're supposed to. So collecting 55%, this message is not going to come up. However, if you're only collecting percent is your promise. No. So I really think this may trigger at a different point, but we can't fix that. We know what it's doing. Now this message appears when we get to a 1 point collected yield. When did I check you to check for swirl? 0.0. So if you check for 0, don't see any swirl, make an adjust this to may see, it prevents this coming up at 1.5 because now your platelets are being released and being collected. Now you're probably seeing this message, at least I hope you say you've seen it a few times. Oh, you've never seen, okay, good. All right, if you are seeing this, likely it's because either you didn't do anything or first time donor. So you can enter in 285 first time donor platelet count, correct? If you see this on a first time donor, it actually means that they're more than likely 150 or lower. There's nothing you can do procedure at this point. It's because we're missing what you told to have. So you're going to see this, especially on a first time donor count, is actually most aren't that way. To worry about it. But if you're message about it, donor, then just that product is not going to pass. Know more about what the RBC does? Does that help? Make you think about it a little differently? Okay. Next is Trima safety box. Our number one concern is donor safety. Right? A box has 4 sides. These are our 4 box. Okay. You cannot make more conservative than they are. I mean, you can't make them affect them more conservative. Sorry, I'm tired. Our Versity Michigan settings. 3 of them are Versity settings. 1 of them here for Michigan. Removed. We are approved to remove up to 15% of a donor's blood. Okay. So a larger donor can give us more blood volume. Smaller donor does not. Right. That also includes rinse back. We include rinse back in that list. They can't actually, we actually look at worst case. So rinse back is assumed the donor's not going to get it in that volume class. Post platelet count. We actually are approved to go down to 50,000, but the United States were mandated by the FDA to not take a donor below 100. Post hematocrit, we actually can go down to 30%. Versity has it set to 32. So if you take a cell or have a concurrent red cell or have residuals or non-rinse back, if it can take the donor below 32, it won't let you do that procedure.
So is that why some people can program for a double red on Trima and others can't?
Correct. So if their hematocrit's not high enough to begin, if it's going to take below 32, it's let them do that procedure. Okay. Runtime in Michigan, your maximum time for a procedure is 104 minutes. Runtime is processing time. Okay. In the other Versity regions, this runtime is 120 minutes. Now, the maximum overall time is 50 minutes for everybody. The difference is on the screen, blood running, it does not include alerts, pauses, messages. Now, on top of that, rinse back is not included in that. So in Michigan, could have a procedure 140 minutes, have 10 minutes of problems, back and have a 155 minutes, and that is safe and okay and approved to do. In the other regions, you can have a treatment run 120 minutes, 30 minutes of problems, and rinse back and still get 155. And again, that's still fine and safe and okay to do. Now, I'm not saying you need a donor that long, but sometimes it happen and it's okay, not an issue about it. All right. Now, along with 4 items and some eligibility criteria, Trima will qualify your donor what they can. Once a procedure, if any of these 4 items are exceeded, it's usually the run. Trima will kick you major, and it's usually because you've slowed down and it can't run at the speed to maintain that time. Of course.
Screen at the end of the run.
Yes. How much blood through the tubing to actually to get your product? So the question was, there's a value on the screen, total blood volume process. That's how much blood we actually put through the tubing set.
So some of it's the same blood that was already.
Correct.
Okay.
We have recirculated the same blood. On some of your donors, may be more blood than they actually have. So all donors, you actually can see a donor's total volume from the very beginning. So a smaller donor might have 100 milliliters. Notice the total processed because we actually sold their blood through our tubing set. Yep. So that is their blood that we actually put there to get something. Now that is what triggers hearings, just so you guys know, is a certain amount of blood through the tubing set can tell us when we're having to do. If you have a donor who runs, might have some that are 6,000 milliliters. All right, that's going to tell you we're doing 2 clearings procedure. So that's a little bit more I normally would talk about. Since you asked, the higher the blood volume that has, the more clearing. Okay, good question. We sent questions about what volume for my donor. All right, down the left is typical types of procedures. STP is a single platelet, PP is a double platelet, TPP is a triple platelet. In the middle is the size of the product volume. That may not guys have here. This should be pretty close for the sake of a single platelet at the top is 250 ml product. A double 500 ml product, and then a triple 50. You guys are probably closer to 700, but what because of our procedure, we're leaving the donor's balance down by those values on the right. So taking a 250 ml product, donor's fluid balanced down by 48. A triple, taking 750, we're leaving them down by 1. Do we have a solution for platelet procedure? But there is something. AC. AC is not replaced. Getting the AC back during the, which is them to not be down the exact amount that they're collecting. So when you get to a whole blood donation, you're taking 500 off, putting them down 5. Many customers has a reaction in whole blood. We'll sometimes move them over to free because loss isn't whole blood donation, getting some liquid procedure. That is true for this device. You're getting ready to ask? Yeah. It is the same, but I don't know their actual volumes to that. But I know any apheresis device does the same. And what volume they get makes it same as a whole blood. Okay. Now, if you look at the bottom here, double red cell and plasma cell, and I know this is the plasma red cell, but that's plasma only. These value columns without placement. You do have to do a double and not give more saline. Okay, so none of those values leave the donor down as much as whole blood because you guys are getting saline back. Don't tell you, but they actually gain weight in a double red cell. Okay, so the volume they're getting above what we get is what numbers mean. Examples, of course we can. At 40 mLs at the top, that's 1.6 ounces. That's the size of that little 5-hour energy bottle at the gas station. The bigger one, I think you guys called them earlier. Triple play,
Yeah, sure.
hat trick. Your single red cell, your double plasma red cell, about 430 milliliters. That's 14 ounces, size of a can of pop or Coke or soda, depending on where you guys already call it. So you send it to the canteen. You hope that they drink a bottle of water or something in the canteen to help replenish the liquid we took from them. Okay. And to that, how long it took calcium to have an effect on the calcium? Minutes. So we hope they sit for 10. There's no lasting effect left in their body, as well as bring their fluid back.
So like after connecting them, about 10 minutes after we connect them, it is where in their body.
Correct. Yeah, about 10 minutes after the AC has been, basically its effect is sliced out and just becomes water in their body. Okay.
15 years of reason.
Yep. So that's really the main reason why you do ask donors to stay around for 10 to 15 minutes in the hopes that we do this, but it's more related to the anti. And then that's compared to a pint of beer for a whole blood donation. Okay. Pint for pint. There you go. All right. Now I'm going to give you guys some performance data. Now, for those of you on teams, these couple next screen related to Michigan specifically, but they are all very similar to all diversity regions. Platelet component per successful platelet procedure. That is our fancy terminology for split. In Michigan was 2 platelets per procedure. Okay. That puts Michigan and all the other diversity centers, which have a similar number, in our 5 performers in the United States. I know you guys have heard from many people, all of your teams, that you guys are doing a great job. I'm here to tell you that you are doing a great job, established job. You guys are working, and we're seeing those. Okay. Now we joke about the Nike commercial. I want to be like all centers. So like Versity. So Versity is part of Blood Centers of America. There are 67 part of these. You guys, so including Ohio as one of the top 5 performing centers time for any of the centers in the U.S. Okay, so you guys should commend yourself in your performance. You guys are doing a. Compare you to other blood centers. Any but 2 is considered high performing. All right, most centers are at a 2 or lower. All right, so again, everybody outside sees what Versity, and they want to know what you guys are doing to be where you are. Okay, but the reason is you guys have opportunities. What better? That collect Trima offers you a platelet. Are you guys taking? In February, you guys were up to 83%. Okay, now again, this is all of Michigan. C regions, all have numbers as well. Also doing a great job. What we see is, okay, that 18% that you're 17%, what does that translate to? The chart shows you how many you guys are missing by month. So it's missing about 500 platelets per month on average. The regions, that's a similar number. To put that in for other customers, this number is thousands of missed platelets at other centers. Okay, so you guys really are doing awesome. Okay, now 500 per month divided between the 9 up to 9 now, 8 University of Michigan 9 currently. I don't know. You guys keep this out of the 9 centers. Yeah, each one. It is not bad. And pull up your center so you actually I did you guys earlier this morning. Okay. Your supervisor sites actually can get these from Katie if you guys are interested. Numbers are compared to all the other average blood centers. So you guys should be proud. This is from a perspective. This one here, all right, this is just platelets alone. From the date range to the top, you had 168 people. It might be the same donor over again, but we had 168 donors that all they were capable of was one platelet. Okay, this is not a donor who was a double who came in and said, no, this is a donor who all they could do was one. The other regions are pretty similar. Now, second column, that difference between column 2, those are missed platelets. That's a before you even start here. That's what you select. So that's that donor that was a double that said I want to do a single. That's where that difference comes there. Between that second and third column, okay, those are things that happen during the procedure before it gets done. It has to go to the rest, the donor because of time, or they're having a reaction, or that just whatever comes you to not finish that and shift it to something else in the procedure. Now that difference between was at 7 to 9, those platelets. Will you ever get that to match? I expect that to match. My goal is to see if there's something you guys can do to forever get that. Okay, because owners that control that can or have. Okay, in perspective, before I get to you, that number 1,000 range to many other blood cells.
The so does that rate have a lot to do with donor base and high platelet?
It does, but it's not the only effect. And you just donor base is very good, but it's average to what everybody else is seeing. So if compare you to other blood centers, you don't have it any different than, and they question how you guys keep doing it. That split rate is representative. You guys are getting it offered, taking it most. Okay. Now your base does influence that because without good donors, you couldn't take these platelets, but it's not the only reason. And many other customers, the donor base similar, but their offered rate is below 80%. They're missing out on 20-25% of the products. Are not taking them, and you guys are. Okay. What was your other?
Is there any vitamin K making any difference?
Not vitamin K. I am not anything. Are you changing platelet count? Okay. So there is nothing currently that we're aware of. NJ donors platelet count up or down. Now, down changed because of medical issues, but there's nothing a donor can, medicine, food, diet that will change their platelet count. Now, there are 2 medical conditions that can change your platelet count, and we don't ever want you to do either of them. Donors who have had head trauma, okay, will sometimes come back with a higher platelet count, and people who have had spleens removed will come back with a higher platelet count. Okay. Other than that, there's nothing medically known that you can do to increase your platelet count. Now, there's, say, some type of Indian spices and things can change that. There's no medical knowledge that says that that's true. Okay, no, good question. I'm surprised we waited to the last day for somebody to actually ask that question. Yes.
So, because I technically did not meet expectations for my optimization.
Okay.
I think I was like, I don't know, 83 or something. I don't know. But do you think we as Versity have our standards set a little as far as our expectations for the optimization?
For no. Maybe for other things, my opinion, I can adjust them. But for optimization, you have centers in Versity that are running in the 95% range. Individual operators running in the 95% range. So my goal for everybody, 85 is obtainable for every single person. All right. And so, if there's some things we can talk about offline for any of you, I'm happy to do that. If you're always stuck with all the bad donors, maybe that's one thing, but I don't think that's the case for anybody on there. Hopefully something in today can help you have different conversations to help affect some donors. But 83, if that's what you say you're at, is not a bad number. I mean, that means you're close to 85.
Okay.
And I don't know what you guys' goals are individually, and that doesn't matter at this point. But it's, hopefully we can find something to help you guys improve each individually and as a team.
Yeah, we got some things changing coming. So.
Yep.
So,
All right. Over here before we move on.
So I came across something recently where someone had a platelet count that was too high.
Okay.
We recommended that because they were worried, like, what am I doing that's making it too high, that they go to their doctor. And then I believe that they found something like thrombocytopenia.
TT, something like that.
Like what?
Yeah. That's beyond my medical knowledge. But yep. So you guys, I mean, there are conditions that can cause your platelets, but those are illnesses.
Yeah.
I don't hope anybody does. Those typically don't count in the 600s and 700s. And that's outside of our scope. You guys would need to use the Optia device for something to lower counts when it's done in your therapeutic collection side.
You need therapeutic, someone with too high of a platelet count?
And Trima, at least I'm not allowed to say yes to that. Your medical director can do different things if they want. But typically Versity does in the donation.
Okay.
So they need to get daily the pounds, and if they're I want to say they're above 650. The donors they will reach out to personally.
I've heard of donor that counts in the range, and those are what we medical intervention because platelets can cause some serious issues. Put that offline.
the list is
Not anything. All right. So we showed you that. Next, single component rate. As you guys are printing downwards. All the Versity values that look so great board. I discount the others on our teams. When we look at the rate, this includes the N red cells, the previous two platelets, looking at all components. This number is 10%. You guys are now right around 6% for most of the Versity region. So that again is the number. It means you can maximizing your. You have a case. I have some customers fighting to get to 10%, and I have a couple 20 and that range. That means spending more money to collect on their donors. Where everybody can improve is unsuccessful rate, that's Q rate. But you can see here, you guys are all trending that way. All the diversity is that way. So whatever you got for the last year, it is true. And again, specifically, you guys were below for February. B search for the entire group is set. See where you guys moved, and last were better than the majority of BCA members in the entire country. So keep up the job. Now, I think we'll ever get to 100%. It's usually related to this one right here. These two slides. You have donors that all they, all right, you can't kick them out right now because you need every play that you can get. Donors that you can't be successful with. You also have a lot of new staff. 85% diversity staff is here's on the job, which means there's a lot of people that may not have years experience at the bottom. Okay, but you guys are working as a team and learning from one another. And even so, you're still going to have a new staff, and that's why this is never going to get to 0. Okay. Let's take here. This is where my number is different than what Versity's number is. I'll just, that's, where you guys are currently is sitting in a good place. Now, somebody asked me from another person, Versity to Versity location. So this one's actually comparing all the Versity sites. This was calendar year 2022, January to December. The darker green is first place. The lighter green is second place. Did not do third, fourth, and fifth. Okay. Now, if there's any Wisconsin people, I will say great job by Wisconsin. You guys are doing a fabulous job. Now, let's to keep doing with state number 1. But that means the rest of you can in first place. And which team meeting here, most of the people are going bring, because it makes everybody else, they all continue to improve. Now, if I look at shorter frames or individual months, every one of the diversity regions is something depending on which month we look at. Just if we look at your time frame, Wisconsin, this chart was for all of these. Let that discourage you. All right. All doing a great the board. If I look at last month for everybody, I can't really do the difference between first and fifth place. You're all on top of one of yours. So this was, but everybody February 8 month for locations. All right. Some people staring at, oh, wait a second. And run rate. So that actually hit before turns back. You still got a product, runner still got runs back, but you didn't target it from the end. So for you guys have a 10-0 target and your donor needed to go to the restroom to a 9-8, but you didn't know that was targeted, procedure ended early. So the number to be below 10%. So you guys all there. Ohio, I don't know if anybody from there are much smaller. They've been in use years, so their numbers are drastically improving. But when I look at the year, they had some bad months to make them look bad. But Ohio is just right in line with you guys and a great job as well. Okay. But end run rate means you hit end run in the upper right quarter and stop what's supposed to be done. Okay. All right. I have some time. Anybody on team? One more slide. If you have a donor on the device and you legal or helpline, walk you through anything and help you whatever you want. You have Dwayne, Dale, and Pam, who all used to be operators at, and they know how you guys feel and what you're doing, and we'll be happy to help you. If you have a question, maybe in the middle of the night you wake up later and something, I hope you don't wake up in the middle of the night and think about Trima. But if you have, feel free to reach out to me. Thing I ask is you include your apheresis coordinator on any questions so that they are aware of what you're asking, so we can share with anybody else. Okay, in the middle of the night, but all right. I shared this earlier, and I'd like to share this real quick, specifically our helpline. All right, our team knows what you guys are doing. Many of you happen to get Dwayne. Okay, Dwayne used to work for Bonfire in Colorado. His dad was going through cancer treatment while he was at the blood center, then to visit his dad's hospital room. Was curious about whose blood was hanging on there, and he went up and looked at it, and it had his handwriting on it. So our exactly what you guys do, and he knows it from both sides. So, you know, giving you guys have on this about patients, you know, it gives me goosebumps. He's well aware that we share that conversation, and he's that, but we know what you guys do, and we know it from both sides. Okay. The one last thing I'll add, because this came up earlier, the question we get is, well, what can we do to help our donors are supposed to do? Your donors coming in for years, all of you more than likely have already told them everything that you can change. So spend your new donors, coming on ones that you can have an impact on. Those donors that have been 10 years, the only way they're going to change is if somebody really close to them, splits their blood, realize that I could have helped more people. But the easiest thing you can actually start saying is change and minimize the amount of choices you give. So the question is, well, how do we go with is anybody from Indiana on? The number one diversity center currently is South Branch, Greenwood, and Nicholas. They're running in the upper 90s on many of their furniture now. And everybody wants to know what they do down there. The simple is you can tell your donor after approach, you are saving 3 today, and you're going to be done by 7 o'clock. That sounds much better than you're a triple in 2 hours. Right? Your donors think they know everything what's going on because you've educated them, but they also know exactly what single, double, and triple means. Those are our and yours. But turning it around on the patient side and don't give them more information they need. That way they don't have the chance to tell you no. So what South Branch does triple in two, done in 2 hours. When you're done at 4 o'clock, thank you for your donation. Here's a blanket to keep you warm, and then they walk away. The longer you stay there and give them more information, the donor feels entitled to and want to know what those are. Okay. New donors are perfect because they don't know that. Your donors are recruited there for 2 hours. Let them sit there for 2 hours if they can do it. Okay. All right. Thank you. Hope this was helpful for all of you. Anybody have any questions on Teams? All right. If there's